How is everyone doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Bante?
Good. Cold, but otherwise I'm doing very well. And being cold is nice too. There's nothing inherently wrong with being cold.
It's a part of life.
Yeah. Hello, Wessel. Wessel, you're always changing your profile picture, so thank you for bringing such a creativity to our group practice. Hello, Nuno.
Hi everyone.
Hi, Linda. Welcome. Hello, Gosia and Blue. Hello, Josh. Glad that you're here. It's been really nice recently. People have been so motivated to join and to be here that even, before I haven't had to really make an announcement a lot of the times to let people know that this is the time because people are very invested in it. Hello, Francie.
That was me. Did you hear?
One of
There's
the
a
reasons that might be the case, it's because the room only has like room for 25 people, so you kind of gotta hurry up so you
That's
can make
good.
it.
Yeah, that's good. A great teacher once told me he was I think he used to work in like Silicon Valley. He was a big tech guy, um, and had drug addiction as well. So he lived a very interesting life, but eventually he became a Zen priest. He became like a Zen monk. So he told me, he said, to be on time is to be late. To be on time is to be 5 minutes early. So if you're there on time, you're late. You should try to be there early. Um, and if it's not so important to you, then you don't have to go at all. There's no early or late in showing up to a place that's doesn't have value to you, but otherwise try to be there as soon as you can. Hello, Meaty and Smen and Susan on
I just
YouTube.
want,
What's
I
that?
just wanted to say, I
Man,
just
that's
wanted to
me.
say that I'm
Oh, that's
happy to be here. I hope everybody's having a blessed day.
All right, Blue. Glad that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you.
man. That's me.
Yes. Hello, Smen. That is you.
Oh,
And Hoalu over on YouTube. Hi there. Great. Thank you, Smen. So we'll take just another 3 minutes to get settled in and give everyone a time to join, opportunity to join. Hello, Anna. And hello, Kat. Kat, just joining the server. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
We just got finished here at the temple with a kind of like a 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock meeting. So just like 3 hours. And most of that was waiting for the teacher to arrive, waiting for Siada, my teacher, to join the Zoom, because a lot of times these very experienced meditation teachers, when you have more success in your mind in ending suffering and developing skillful ways of dealing with suffering, right? Well, what's the problem that everybody has? Suffering. So you can understand that someone with that skill, someone with that degree of success and development, their time is very, very, very valuable. And basically there's just, so many people who are tugging at their strings to get their attention, to ask for advice, to give them land or property. So it's not uncommon to have to wait for someone like that. So we were waiting for a couple hours until he was able to make it to us. And then we had a nice meeting. But the teaching there, and it's something that I've learned about it, or learned through being a monk and waiting around, is that any time is a time for practice. Especially when you have the intention or you're looking in the direction of someone to give a teaching, or you're waiting around to meditate. Well, start meditating. You don't need to wait to do that. You don't need to twiddle your thumbs. Get started, and then you'll be more ready than otherwise possible. The best way to prepare ourselves to meditate is to meditate. The best way to prepare ourselves to listen to a teacher is to meditate. There was one monk. He's from the Czech Republic, and he's very famous in Myanmar and um, around the world. He's very skillful. And I went and stayed at his temple just for a very short time, just a couple days. And his policy at the temple was, when people come to live there as guests, um, they're basically coming there to take a meditation retreat. So his policy was, unless you sit for at least 6 hours a day, you can't ask me questions. You can't talk to me. So I don't know that I would adopt something like that, but the teaching there is that when you practice meditation, when you take those steps on your own of contemplation, introspection, going deeper, then you have a deeper question to ask. You have something that's more vital, more sensitive, more real for you. because you've spent all that time kind of stepping into you rather than just skimming around on the surface all the time. Okay, so I see 80 is here. That's wonderful. Welcome, 80. Anastasia. Let's see who else just joined in. Maya is here. Jamie, Johnny, Kat, Bubble Master. So we're all here. We've got a full house. That's wonderful. And Hoalu and Susan over on the YouTube. So let's begin as we usually do. Just to kind of find our listening position, because I want to focus a little bit more on the reading today, but really take a moment to adjust your posture and find a place that you're going to be comfortable to sit in, to be in. So find that posture, that way of setting the body down, getting comfortable. Take a few deep breaths. Breathe in deeply. Breathe out deeply. Start to find yourself right where you are, sitting here. The body is here, the mind is here. Your intention to train the mind, your intention to embrace suffering and face yourself is here. And maybe most importantly of all, this willingness to be still, to stop our chasing, to stop our running towards and running away from, but instead to be still at this moment, to be sitting here right now. Try to notice if there's any pain or tension in the body, any tightness. And relax that, release that, maybe change your posture. Just to breathe deeply and show up, to be here right now. With each breath, like coming home or recognizing that you are home. Nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, but that this is it. This is reality. This is life. And each breath can bring us to that frame of mind, that way of being. with this very breath, waking up, finding ourselves exactly where we are, exactly where we need to be. Right here, right now, in community, in our Buddha book club, that is, to study the teachings of wisdom, to study, to receive, to embrace medicines for the mind. In our continued reading of Ajahn Brahm's book, The Art of Disappearing. So we left off yesterday with this emphasis and this teaching on no self. So this saying of, there is no one to control this mind and body anyway. There is nobody in here. It's not my business. Let's just leave it alone. This is true Buddhism. It is exactly what the suttas say, the original teachings say. Understand that there is no you here to do anything. So why struggle? That sort of reflection may be enough to give you the confidence to leave things alone and to help you know what leaving things alone truly means. So to let go and to put down this constant sense of self and struggle, trying to fix things, trying to get things, trying to avoid things, but rather that fundamentally there's no you. There's no character in the movie, in the game of our life to do anything. And so in our meditation practice, we allow things to be as they are. We don't get so involved. We don't make it to be a struggle for ourselves. So we'll move on to this next section, overcoming desire and ill will. Of the 5 hindrances, the first 2, desire and ill will, are the most important. So that's desire and ill will. Desire means wanting something other than what you already have. Ill will means not wanting what you do have. This goes to the very core of the Buddhist philosophy. Okay, what is the cause of suffering in Buddhism? It's craving. It's a desire for something other than what you already have at this moment. And it's a kind of desire not wanting what you do have. So they're both just forms of wanting, desire and ill will. And when you want something different, whether it's the next level of meditation, food, the end of a retreat, or whatever else, it always takes you away from where you are. In Greek mythology, there are beings known as sirens. These creatures draw unwary sailors onto the rocks with their enticing songs. This is what desires do. They entice you, pull you in the direction of the desired object, and shipwreck your meditation. You get no happiness or peace. Desires pull you away from where you can find true satisfaction. So instead of allowing yourself to be pulled along, remember that fulfilling your endless desires is not in your power. Just sit there, you don't move, you just watch. So we have to recognize quite deeply that it is not in our power to fulfill our endless desires. And certainly everyone here has been trying to the best of their abilities, right? You've all been trying to fulfill your desires, to find satisfaction. And it doesn't work. You know, as many years as we've been on the planet, that's how many years we've been trying to fulfill our desire. It's not in your power to do that. So in meditation, in this contemplative, introspective practice, to understand the nature of your mind, the nature of reality, the nature of suffering, and to end suffering, instead of allowing yourself to be pulled along, remember that fulfilling your endless desires is not in your power. Just sit there. You don't move. You just watch. Just as desire creates doing, so does ill will. Ill will meaning having a kind of negative intention for someone or something. Desire and ill will are what make you move, what makes you tired. They create the activity of the mind that disturbs and agitates you. Once you see ill will and desire and how they work, you can say, no, I'm not going to get involved in that anymore. What I have is good enough. So when we sit down to practice meditation, we have to have that approach. When we see our desire and when we see our ill will, when we have a feeling, oh, I want something different, or we have a feeling, I don't want what I have, we have to be able to say in a certain way, no, I'm not going to get involved with that. I'm not going to get involved with that right now. And that's the thing, that most people cannot say that, right? So that's a meditator versus someone who's not a meditator, okay? That's kind of that factor that actually allows us to practice meditation or not. If we can be fully aware of our desires, right? Fully aware that we want something else and we don't want what we currently have. And we can say to that feeling, that experience, right? That drive, that desire, no, I'm not going to get involved in that anymore. What I have is good enough. This allows us to meditate. This allows us to practice. Good enough is a beautiful mantra. It's great to use in your meditation no matter what you are experiencing. If you are so tired that your head is almost on the floor during your meditation, say, this is good enough. As you breathe in and out, say, good enough. But you have to be consistent and make every moment good enough. In this way, you subdue the desires that take you away and the ill will that keeps you from staying here. And you get a sense of stillness and satisfaction. There's a story about the wealthiest person in the world. if they're not satisfied with what they have, they're poor. And the poorest person in the world, someone who has absolutely nothing, they're living on the street, they're destitute, versus this person who's living in yachts, and penthouses and has all this money. If that person, destitute, living on the street, is content, is satisfied with what they have, well, then there's a satisfaction and a joy there that is wealth. So you can have all the things in the world that you like and that you want. But if you're not satisfied that, then you're poor. You may have almost nothing, but you're satisfied, you're content. Well, then you're a very wealthy person. And so this is kind of, at least for me, it comes to my mind that this is a part of the exchange between oftentimes very wealthy people, or just people who have material possessions, and monks, is that monks can find contentment, this kind of spiritual wealth, in having almost nothing. And all kinds of different wealthy people in the world have almost no contentment, even though they have all this material ability and power. So we exchange, we support each other in that way. So you have to be consistent and make every moment good enough. In this way, you subdue the desires that take you away and the ill will that keeps you from staying here, staying in the present moment. And you get a sense of stillness and satisfaction. There is nothing you need, nothing you desire, and the here and now really is good enough. You now start to recognize and experience the delight of meditation, the delight born of being still and wanting nothing. You see that the good enough practice is just the beginning. When you convince yourself that the present moment is good enough and you stay with what you have, it's not just good enough anymore, it's actually damned good and immensely beautiful. No matter where you start, when you stay with what you have, it grows in beauty, delight, and profundity. Many years ago, I developed the simile of the lotus flower with 1,000 petals. It doesn't matter what sort of lotus you begin with. And the lotus, for those who don't know, is this kind of Buddhist flower that grows in very dirty, stinky mud. And it's not until the lotus blooms that this kind of flower comes out of it. And until then, it's this, this ball that's covered in mud, because that's where it comes out of. And it kind of grows in like a swamp. Even the most unpromising, dirty, straggly, malformed lotus will do, because inside every lotus there is a beautiful heart. What I mean is that every experience you have, this one right now, or even the worst one you've had during a long retreat, during a long life, becomes delightful if you can only stay with it. Don't change it, move it, or try to get rid of it. Don't have desire for it or ill will toward it. Be with whatever is there, even pain, boredom, or desperation. Even the lotus that is all black and dirty and ugly outside opens up and becomes delightful if you just stay with it. The more you stay with it, the more it opens up. The more you say good enough, the more those ugly outer petals open up to reveal less ugly petals. Then the less ugly petals open up to fine petals, and soon you get into the beautiful stuff. It's extremely useful to know that this is the way the mind works. It doesn't matter what you're experiencing or what you start off with. Anything can be transformed. You don't have to get rid of all of the problems and then start meditation afterward. Start with your problem. Be with it and allow it to be. This is good enough. If you don't move, if you have no desire or ill will, you find that your mind bores into the problem, opens it up, and what was once intolerable is now easily endured. Next, it becomes quite nice. And having become quite nice, it then becomes delightful. And it all started out from the most unpromising of beginnings. So whatever you're experiencing, know that it's good enough. In this way, you are abandoning many of the obstacles to meditation. Okay, does anyone have a question or something to share about what we've read so far?
I have a question.
Okay.
Um, if if suffering, um, well, I guess I just have to ask, like, um, is if the process of restoring is natural, does that mean that suffering is natural?
Well, it doesn't matter if suffering is natural or not. There is suffering. Whether it's
Right.
natural or synthetic or good or bad is kind of irrelevant. There is suffering. There is difficulty. And so the question is how do we relate to that? How do we release that? How do we take our suffering and transform it into happiness, joy, peace, into freedom? And so the teaching here is that we don't transform suffering into freedom by running as fast as we can away from it, or by, covering it with chocolate, but we transform suffering by accepting it, by being willing to be with it. So we start with the problem. We start with the recognition of suffering. We start with the recognition of difficulty. And like I said, rather than trying to cover it in chocolate or run away from it, um, we stay with it. We start with it. We be with it. We allow it to be. And eventually you do enough meditation, you find out that, well, that's your only option, to allow it to be. But when we're constantly in that cycle, that treadmill of, trying to cover our problems in chocolate or trying to run away from them as fast as we can, we never go into that process of allowing it and being with it. So we don't bore down deeply into it. We don't get a deep understanding of what that problem actually is. Because the problems, the traumas, the difficulties in our lives are not psychological mazes that we need to navigate through. That may be helpful at certain times to understand them in that way and to deal with them in that way, right? But it's way more subtle than that. It's way, way, way more subtle than that. How the mind is traumatized, how we experience suffering. And what do I mean by it's way more subtle than that? Oh, it's ones and zeros, much more than it is this and that time and this time and she and him and and I was like this and I was like that. It's electrical signals. I mean, it's as down deep, it's as refined, it's as intricate as you can possibly imagine it to be. And so when we are willing to start with the problem, to start with the issue, to start with the suffering and to be with that, to stay with it and allow it to be that way, um, the mind bores into that, meaning it drills down deep into the core of that suffering. And then it starts to open up. Something that at one time was unbearable, unthinkable, couldn't be dealt with, you couldn't be with it. It gave you a panic attack every time you thought about it or something like that, crippling, becomes fine. Eventually becomes pleasant, eventually becomes wonderful, because those sufferings are a source of liberation. Those sufferings are a source of freedom. It just depends on how we work with them. If we're willing to be with them, bore into them. By allowing, not by struggling, not by fighting, but by allowing them to be what they are, what they truly are. What do you think about that, Blue?
I feel as if um that path that path is a blessing that has been found and given to us, and we mapped out the way as well, and I'm just grateful that it's there for people who because some people have a really um like powerfully like or like they have like um the suffering is intense for them. So I'm just glad that it's there for them, and that we have awareness of other ways in in case um in case somebody struggles with um seeing seeing clearly. um so I feel like um um the awareness, the wisdom kind of speaks for itself, um and that it will one day show that it is a path to be highly valued, um in the end for people's for people to cherish their um life and to cherish their family and friends. That's why I like it. That's why I like it, cuz you're pretty much saying it's pretty much like um you know there's the suffering, but then you can see your way out of it, but then you were talking about kind of being here and being in the now, and accepting, like, be ridding yourself of that desire, so that, because that's the truth of it, you're suffering um, is yet but um, one tiny perspective in a sea of bliss. In a sea of bliss. So if you can just realize that the simple things, every problem has a solution, and um, you know, I just think it's beautiful. I really, I'm so blessed and happy to be a part of something like this. This is so cool because um, I have like a disability, and I have like um, because of my like state, I get uncontrollable urges and stuff, and then like I express weird, and then people are like, he's crazy, and I'm trying to explain that to people that it's like different for me. And so with my suffering, I think what I learned that um I learned about the power of self. I learned about the power of self, and then I learned about the value of family and friends, and then the story about how we all go through dark times, and we go through them together, and that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Okay, thank you, Blue. That was very well said. Thank you for your sharing.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question or something to share about what we've read so far today?
Does anyone want to make a question, or can I go?
Okay, Nuno.
Um, it's actually kind of the opposite what Blue said about the suffering. My question would be like, how do you prevent from being sucked in from the pleasure? Because for most people focus on suffering, but how about the pleasure that's stop there to stop us from like achieving enlightenment and meditation?
Well, pleasure seeking doesn't really work out. Um, so we just need a moniker, a degree of wisdom to see clearly that our constant activity of pleasure chasing does not work, does not satisfy us, does not help us to grow, does not help us deal with complex issues. Um, and also, it can be the greatest source of evil in the world is what? Desire for pleasurable experiences, right? One way or another. So don't give holiness, and don't give this undeserved efficacy to chasing desires. This undeserved legitimization to like chasing our desires. Yeah, it's very natural, it's very humanistic to chase your desire, but it also is not, ultimately, it's not particularly satisfying. It doesn't really help us grow most of the time. And anything that does help us grow, maybe you have a desire to be a football player, or a desire to get better at an instrument or something like that, right? What allows you to do that is putting down your desire to eat, to sleep, to have sex. You have to prioritize engaging in a way that's not just based on desire, not just based on feeding your senses. Because it's hard work to develop, right? It's hard work to develop any kind of skill. So an intention, a compassionate intention to bring benefit to yourself and to other people, that's something we can work with. But the just desire itself, craving itself, like desire and ill will, as it's said here, is not going to empower us. It's going to disempower us. It's going to make us enchanted, under the spell of it, when in fact it doesn't work. You can ask anybody who's ordered pizza late at night on Grubhub or Uber Eats. Yeah, you try and you eat it, but then you're hungry again. Maybe you even have a stomach ache. You've spent double price to order from this online delivery service, right? So when we start to look closely, look with mindfulness at the effects of our actions, looking more and more, we will notice that when we're able to put down our selfishness and step back from it, there's more progress, there's more wakefulness, there's more mindfulness that's possible, there's more virtue, more goodness that can come up for us. Whereas when we just do what we've always done, just I desire this, I'm going to do it, or I'm going to get it, or whatever, it tends to hurt ourselves, and it tends to hurt other people. Do you want to add anything else to that question? Okay. Yeah? Josh? Yes?
I was wondering, because of course we're talking about our own suffering, but I was wondering how it relates to suffering of other people, because I was talking to a friend, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, and she is at a point in her life where she feels that she has nothing left to live for, where she's very much identified with misery, where she's identified with suffering. And from what I learned, I instead of giving sympathy in that sense, I just was with her for as long as I could. But I wonder if it's in that situation, if it is skillful to take the other person's suffering as your own and work through it as you would through your own. Or
No,
if there's
it's not. Because another person's suffering is not your suffering. So it's just playing games with misery. Look, as much as you can get addicted to pleasure and building yourself up and, wow, I'm so confident, I'm so good looking, I'm so strong, I'm so fast, I can speak so well, all this, as much as you can get addicted to those kinds of thoughts and those ways of relating to yourself, you can also get addicted to being miserable and perpetuating this idea of misery about yourself. And, oh, poor me, um, I'm just awash in misery. I'm in the swamp of my life, and now you're a misery poet, and you're just feeding more and more misery and suffering because you get addicted to it. So we need to be careful about that. And when we know that we're going in a direction that is based on desire or ill will, okay, we want something else, or we don't want what we have, or we recognize that what we have right now is bad and we don't really want that, but we keep saying, I have it, I have it, I have it, I have it. We're just perpetuating that cycle. We're just perpetuating misery. We're feeding it. So anyway, another person's suffering is not your suffering. So you shouldn't appropriate it. There's these terms about cultural appropriation. You can appreciate it, you can empathize with it, but you have to recognize that that is not it's not coming from you. It didn't originate from you. That person is not your body. That the body that they have is not yours. The experiences that they've gone through are not yours. So when we try to act compassionately with other people, we have to understand our own suffering and empathize with the fact that they are suffering, and then consider what we can do in that situation to help them. A lot of times we can't necessarily do anything, but we have to be very grounded in how we deal with other people, because they are not us. You know, think about how on such a shallow level we know ourselves, right? We barely know ourselves, right? We try to sit in a closet with ourselves for an hour or a few minutes even, and we're in a tussle. You know, what's going on here? I've got to get out of here. I've got to do something else. We try to just sit in meditation. We could barely sit for even a few moments, right? So we don't have such a strong, deep relationship with ourselves. We don't have such a deep wisdom about who we are and what's actually happening, right? If we did, then we could just sit and be aware. We would know what's happening. How much less so do we know other people? So we can empathize with them. We try to help them, but they are not us, and we have to understand that. You know, so do your best, but you have to bring brightness and peace and happiness and that different perspective to your own mind and to your own life, and then you can share that with someone else. You've got to do your work, and then the wisdom that comes from you doing your work can be applied to other people in other situations. But those aren't your situations. You have to work with what you have, because that's actually what you have. You don't have what they have. It's like trying to give yourself cancer to treat someone else's cancer. It ain't going to happen. And in that process of doing chemo, right? Because, I took their cancer, I gave myself cancer, and now I'm going to take chemo. You're just poisoning yourself. And you don't have cancer. They do. So actually, that detachment from other people's situation, that detachment from those sufferings that people have, because they're not your sufferings, it actually enables you to help them and give them a new perspective. Just in the same way that someone can say, well, look, I've done this and I've done that, and I'm this miserable wreck, and I'm unlovable, and I'm just guilty before God and guilty before Buddha. And you confess all this kind of stuff to someone, and they say, you seem fine to me. You seem like a nice guy. And immediately there's this opening, there's this freshness, there's this light that comes into the situation. So bring light to your body and mind. Bring that awareness and that attention and that presence to your body and mind. And then you can offer it to other people.
I think I phrased myself rather unfortunately, but I think the answer was rather fortunate. I wasn't as much talking about taking their suffering and their own as in suffering from somebody else's suffering. I was more so in taking their expression of their suffering as an object of meditation, not taking over the feeling. That being said, I think like a lot of what you just said is things I guess people would say I learned the hard way. But I think they're a very good practice, because it's just my experience. It comes almost as a side effect to be able to help with one's word, as a side effect from helping oneself with one's mind. It's just that I I'm not quite sure of my own role in other people's life and what the appropriate amount there should be. It's not that I am it's not that I am overwhelmed by other people, or that I feel that I should be. I'm just more so looking for what is the most appropriate state to be in if your end is helping someone else.
Look, if you want to lift a car off of somebody else, you better start going to the gym. Okay? So if we have this intention, if we want to save people from fires, if we want to deal with people suffering, we need to deal with our own suffering. Okay? There's no greater light than you can develop inside of yourself for offering to other people. Okay? The loving kindness or the light that you want to offer to someone else, you know, you don't need their suffering to develop that. You've got plenty of suffering. Okay? So this sense of detachment, not over empathizing, okay? At least from the Buddhist perspective, there is no self. There is no real you. There is no real this other person, okay? People are not movie characters. People are not storybook characters, okay? It's a living, breathing, dynamic experience. And what we are able to convey with words is not the lived experience of a human being. Okay, it couldn't be. So, this sense of detachment from other people, from your own suffering, from being overwhelmed by your own suffering, let alone being overwhelmed by other people's suffering or, you know, over empathizing with it, gives you an ability to detach from it and to encourage them to detach from it, to let go of trying to fix it, trying to change it. So you don't need to poison yourself to, you know, give them this kind of detachment. You already are in a good position to practice detachment towards their suffering and to show them that. But working with other people is complicated. I mean, this is the whole system of Western psychology. You know, to be a therapist, and there's so many different ways to approach it. There's so many different dimensions to work with other people and try to deal with their own suffering. But in Buddhism and in this community, the focus is on dealing with our own suffering through meditation, through study, through introspection. And then we're able to offer that skillfulness to other people because we deal with it for ourselves. So this might not be the best answer for you, Josh, but for now, maybe we can work with that, and maybe you can share more about that situation in the group later on. Does anyone else have a question about the reading so far? And maybe even a better answer will come up through our reading, Josh. I hope that it does. So let's continue. The worst problem in meditation is ill will, saying, I don't like this. Okay, so the worst problem that we can encounter, the greatest difficulty that we're going to find in meditation practice and having success in meditation is this emphasis, this saying, I don't like this. So if that's a big part of your mindset and your perspective, listen up. So the worst problem in meditation is ill will, saying, I don't like this, and always comparing and being negative. This kind of fault finding should be abandoned by developing its opposite, accepting, embracing, and looking for the delight and beauty in things. So this kind of fault finding should be abandoned by developing its opposite, accepting, embracing, and looking for the delight and beauty in things. This is actually quite easy. Just look at the natural beauty around you. In Australia, you can go and find a kangaroo and look at the joey poking its head out of the pouch or watching it jumping up and down. Watch the rain dripping from the edge of the leaves, or go out and look at the stars. There is so much beauty in nature. If you look for that beauty, that delight, you will get into the habit of not being a fault finder. Since you're used to seeing the beauty in things, whatever you thought was ugly in your meditation starts to look nice, even beautiful. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, as they say, and success in meditation is in the attitude of the meditator. If you get that attitude right, it leads to kindness, gentleness, and letting go. You become kind to all things. It is just like a mother who loves her children, even if they're little monsters. You can see the mother cradling her baby and looking after it. And even though it climbs all over her back and half strangles her, the mother still loves that kid. If a mother can love like that, surely you can love your mind. Even though it's a little bit delinquent sometimes, you accept it as good enough. Ask yourself whether you're being demanding in your meditation. Are you thinking, I'd better get into jhana on this retreat, or get a nimitta, or at least get peaceful? Jhana is this deep state of meditation. If you're demanding, your meditation won't go anywhere. However, if you reduce your demands, it becomes easy to achieve the good enough attitude. If you don't make great demands on yourself, life, or the world, it is easier to appreciate them. As it is said in the Metta Sutta, you are not demanding in nature. So not being demanding of our body, our mind, or the world, our experiences. We couldn't control it all. So best not to be so demanding. Rather, you are contented and easily satisfied. Train your mind to be like that. Be contented, that is to be satisfied with what we have. Build up that contentment. Be easily satisfied, and then you are heading for jhana, deeper states of meditation. You don't get the jhanas when you want them. They occur only when you build up the causes for their arising. The main cause is stillness of the mind maintained over long periods of time. The energy pours into pure knowing, and then the mind goes deep into that lotus, and it opens up stage by stage, not according to your timeline, not when you want it to, but according to its own natural schedule. It happens because you are still, and you are still because you are content with little, easily satisfied, and not demanding anything. If you do that in daily life, you are building up the causes for deep meditation. When you aren't easily satisfied, when you are demanding and full of wants, you also get restless. When you don't get what you want, your desires grow and you get into a terrible cycle of wanting. You know what it's like when you're desperate. You don't want to walk, you don't want to sit down, you don't want to sleep. And you think, I've got nothing I want to do, and whatever I'm doing now, I don't want that either. It's a terrible situation to be in when nothing whatsoever satisfies you. It happens because you've developed it, because you've created the causes with wrong attitudes and misdirected attention. But if you develop stillness and calm by being easily satisfied and content, you are creating the causes for powerful meditation to happen. If you just sit there, content, still, and accepting that this is good enough, everything starts to happen. You think, wow, at last I can do this. Okay, so the next section will be allowing the you to disappear, and we will start that tomorrow. We'll start reading that tomorrow. So let's take a few moments in closing to do this practice of just sitting here, content, still, and accepting that this is good enough. And try it out, this exercise. Just sitting here, satisfied with what we have at this moment, still, and accepting that this is good enough. We try this as an exercise, okay? If we're having a lot of difficulty with this practice, we can say in our mind, we can even say out loud, this is good enough. Just sitting here, still, breathing, and saying, this is good enough. This is good enough. Satisfied with what we have at this moment. At this moment, we can all bring our hands together. We'll just say a short prayer or affirmation, a wish. Make a few wishes here of loving kindness towards ourselves and the world. And then we'll say 3 sadhus together. Sadhu has this meaning of well done, good job, excellent. So repeating after me. May I be happy and at peace. May the people that I love be happy and safe. May the people that I hardly know be at peace. May those people that I dislike be free from suffering. May all those in Russia and Ukraine be safe and free from fear. May all those in Russia and Ukraine be safe and free from fear. May all beings be at peace. May all beings throughout space and time be at peace. May it be so. May it be so. May it really be so. So now all together we can make this chant of sadhu. So you can try to chant along together with me. Can take a deep breath. Sadhu. 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 Okay, dear fellow practitioners, fellow meditators, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for your practice and your continued study. Be safe, be well, be peaceful, and be satisfied, be content with what you have right now. Okay? See you all again soon. Be safe, be happy.
Thank you. See you guys.
Thank you, Bante.